Josh Pate was talking about Tennessee and NIL, and this goes back to the recruiting they were doing over the weekend, which Dave says it's about culture. I say it's about NIL. Josh Pate, to his credit, says it's about both, but he's
way oversimplified that, but that's fine.
Josh Pate says it's about both. I will say that but what stood out was he had something about NIL that was intriguing to me. He said Tennessee has a, quote, sneaky good NIL. And here's what he means by that. What were we about to say? You held your finger up, Dave.
Well, no, go ahead, because I was going to do 4 downs, but I don't think we're going to. Go ahead. I want to hear what you say.
Let's just play this real quick, see what he says.
If you're recruiting top-end players, they're getting money from anywhere they go. So the money, ironically, is not what pushes most of these recruitments over the finish line. It's the plan. Okay, Texas is brilliant at this. Oregon's brilliant at this. There are a couple other programs that are recruiting halfway decently right now that I think have a ways to go in that. Tennessee, though, is one of the sneakiest, well-put-together NIL operations in college football right now. Not just because they've got money they can spend, it's because they understand not just the A part, but the B, C, D, E, F, G part as well.
Okay, now, Josh Pate has a bigger platform than me right now. So when he says it, it carries a different weight. But I have been saying this, Caleb, for quite some time. I thought that Tennessee was ahead of the recruiting, the NIL recruiting curve, landing a guy like Nico. But I think they're every bit as much ahead of the recruiting curve in the way they're handling it now. And that's paying the Coopers and the Amari Thomases to stay. That's, yes, you get X amount, so you don't ever have to worry about going on a date if you're a Tennessee player, even if you're a 3-star. But you better show up and get on campus and show that you can play against SEC competition to get some real-time money. And if you're James Pierce, you can make $1 million. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly that Tennessee, and I agree with Josh Pate, is ahead of the curve. Every bit ahead of the curve as they were when we were saying they were ahead of the curve 3 years ago. They're even more ahead of the curve because right now you still have, and I'm going to use the example of Oregon. What do they feel like they have to do? Go spend a lot of money on a quarterback and Dylan Gabriel. That's money spent on a guy that you theoretically should already have in your program, that you have to spend a lot of money to pull over. Why is that guy not already in your program? And you can pay him because you know the ins and outs of his game and how he fits your system, and there's no question. You want to pay the guys that stay, not the guys that come, more oftentimes than not.
And this is where Josh Pate said it was chess, not checkers for Tennessee, because they started looking like they were playing checkers in the sense of they opened the checkbook to get Nico Iamaleava. What we're realizing with Tennessee is that, yes, they opened the checkbook to get Nico. That's Josh Heupel's prize recruit. That's who he based. Is it fair to say Josh Heupel based the entire future of building his program around Nico? That was his plan from when he took over at Tennessee.
Yes, he needed a splash. I think the same way, not to the same extent, but Lincoln Riley needed a splash with Kalen Williams and taking him to Southern California. He made a splash by saying, look, I'm the guy. They needed a splash just to say Tennessee can still recruit with the top programs in the nation. Nico was that splash. I don't care how you got him. If you had to pay him $100 million, they needed that.
Yes, they needed that, not just to recruit other players, most importantly because Nico, again, you've never had a better fit for an offense than Nico Iamaleava for Josh Heupel. He had to see Nico and be like, oh my gosh, this guy's perfect.
And in all fairness, you didn't get the fringe benefits that you get with a lot of quarterbacks that are active recruiters. You know, Nico was kind of his own dude. He didn't go out and recruit. Didn't recruit as hard as George McIntyre does now, but not to sidetrack you. Please continue.
Yes, so that's the great part of how they started. Then you're right, they focused on keeping guys. They also focused their NIL resources. Now, this is another thing according to Pate. This is the one that we haven't seen yet, and we hope to see this soon. But they're reportedly, based on things Pate said, I'm kind of coming up with an ideology in my head that, Dave, I have a feeling Tennessee is getting players at a certain NIL discount because they're identifying them so early that they already have an edge on them in recruiting. Some of the understanding I have is that they're identifying kids like 3 years out right now on the recruiting trail. And they are scouting. They have an insane scout and identification and evaluation process going on in Knoxville right now.
Well, here's what happens. When you get hired, you have what, 3, 4, 5 years, right? You can just flop around and be average for 3, 4, 5 years. So you're able to recruit like that. You hit on some guys that you like more. There have been guys. Was Jalen Hyatt a 3-star, I believe?
He was a 4-star, but
okay. So was it? There was a receiver. What was it? Cedric Tillman. Anyway, there have been guys you would agree that they went after early. You would have said, well, we'll see how they pan out because they're 3-star guys. Okay, and some of them have panned out, some of them haven't. But the side effort of all that is that you have those relationships now. And that's something that Derek Dooley never had. That's something that Butch Jones never had for different reasons. So you have an automatic advantage when you're recruiting whoever because you've known him since he was a sophomore. You also know if he's going to fit your culture. Whereas, just to use an example, Billy Napier right now at Florida is scurrying around to do what, Caleb? I mean, he almost has to scurry around to get a 4-star to make the boosters feel good about him keeping his job. That's the way recruiting is supposed to work. And forgive me for covering a guy that was one of the best of all time in Philip Fulmer and a head coach, right? But that's the way it's supposed to work. Some of these guys, some of these commitments at the University of Tennessee, probably 25, 30% of them should be no-brainers. They either, grew up in your backyard, T. Higgins, or they have a lineage, they have a tie, or they just saw you and love you on TV for whatever reason, the offense you run. I mean, really, at least a third should just fall into your lap, right? Because you're Tennessee.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because of all the criticisms we've given Fulmer back in the day. Philip Fulmer had a unique ability. My high school at Ridgeway, he walked in and knew the head coach by name in Memphis on the other side of the state. He is, and it kind of comes with being the ultimate politician as a coach, which he was, the schmoozer of everybody. He knew how to do that very, very well. So where Fulmer could, am I right, if he could really walk into any high school he wanted to and just say, hey, coach, to whoever the high school football coach was, and they could strike up a conversation.
It helped that most high school coaches are oftentimes offensive linemen because offensive linemen, I believe, as a unit or for whatever reason, the smartest guys. I think I don't know why, but other than quarterbacks, I typically think they're really smart. So Philip Fulmer walks in there as a former offensive lineman. He's like, I did it. I did what you want to do. I've achieved this level of greatness. But again, I look at Billy Napier and having to chase around one guy to win a PR war. And I don't know if he's thinking like that, but if he's not, it needs to be in the back of his head because Caleb, that's the way Butch Jones kept people on his side for so long. And I heard a lot of bad things about Butch Jones early on, but he was still getting some recruiting licks, and that was keeping fans kind of happy. I mean, was he around a year longer because he had at one point the number 4 class? I mean, he had some recruiting victories. There's no question.
He won everybody over his first 2 years in Knoxville because of the recruiting he was doing. I mean, everybody. He got back-to-back top 5 classes. Rankings-wise, those are still the 2 best classes Tennessee has had since Philip Fulmer was fired. Not even close. And so he had everybody won over because of that. Heupel, now, the part I want to add to this is maybe they're getting NIL discounts on these guys. The question is coming because of the early evaluations. The question becomes, can these early evaluations pan out? Because whatever you want to say about Jeremy Pruitt, you mentioned Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. He evaluated those guys. Tillman was actually kind of a throw-in, I guess, to get a Vegas pipeline, but he evaluated Jalen Hyatt before anybody did. And he went out and got Jalen Hyatt. Heupel's doing a lot of that. We don't know yet if those guys are going to pan out. I do think what they're doing, and this is the other selling point, and this is the whole selling point you talk about of players staying, Dave. Heupel's basically telling players, I think this is helping Tennessee on the recruiting trail. Look, there's a less than 20% chance you're one of those top 5 draft picks in the NFL, like a James Pierce. You're lucky if you're one of those. The truth of the matter is you'll have to develop and you'll have to work to get drafted. But if you have to do that, we can promise you money when you're a senior coming back and having to stay in college, whereas you'll have to weigh your options a lot more if you go to a place like Georgia, because they'll just ship you out the door to go for somebody else. And I think that's actually selling to players right now. To say that you will.
Why does Tennessee have to be nicer than other schools? Why don't you just ship them out the door and good luck to you, Mr.
Well,
Mark?
I don't think Tennessee's at a ship them out the door level yet. They haven't had they don't have a top 5 class on their roster right now. But what I'm saying is,
they've done it with quarterbacks.
Yes, no, they can ship out the door. What I'm saying though, Dave, is that they're promising players, and this is the B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L that Josh Pate pointed out. Beyond just what they're offering them up front, they're promising them, if you choose to stay in college and you're productive, we can offer you this much when you're a junior. We can offer you this much when you're a senior. You can still continue to make money if you're not an early NFL draft pick. I know you want to be an early NFL draft pick. I know you want to come out early. Everybody does. Everybody wants to make money. But if that doesn't happen, and if you're still a productive player for us, we can promise you this amount of money. Look what we just promised Cooper Mays and people like that. And I think there's a lot of forward-thinking players that realize I may not be a top 5 draft pick. The money that's promised to me as a junior or senior in college may be relevant.
Okay. You got me thinking about a topic that bounced in my head last night. And no, I was not on any hallucinogens, if that's what you're concerned about, because this one's out there. Why in the world did Josh Heupel make sure to redshirt Nico Iamaleava last year? Thought about this? Have you thought that the revenue sharing's coming along? Have you thought that maybe a fantastically awesome, proven quarterback in the SEC is as valuable to the SEC or a team as it is to an NFL team? Could we at some point have a situation in which Tennessee's NIL can rival what the NIL is paying? Could that be what
NFL
Josh Pate is referring to?
Yes, that's absolutely what it is. I think Cooper Mays probably made more than what his base was promised to come back to Tennessee. You tell me that if that's true, Dave, but I feel like, isn't the base in the NFL only 400,000?
No, the base in the NFL is 850. I was told not by Cooper that it wasn't 850, but it was pretty darn good. And I can tell you that based off Tennessee's base scale, you would be looking at James Pierce. I don't want to get into specific numbers, being a 7-digit player. I can tell you that's the case.
So you're suggesting they redshirt Nico because they'll have the money to keep him around beyond what his. See, the reason it's hard for me with Nico is Nico could be a top 5 pick, and that NFL top 5 pick money, I don't think Tennessee can pay that. Now, I agree with your overall premise because so many quarterbacks in college are so much more valuable in college than the NFL, and no, they aren't. I mean, if you were Nebraska and Tommy Frazier, you were worth way more money to play college than you were to go to the NFL, right? Given what you could do to a team. I'm not sure Nico's in that camp because I think NFL teams are going to want Nico badly.
Well, I will tell you this. They went out of their way to redshirt him. And I know, Meade, you're saying I thought they redshirted him because of the family. I heard that too. But the bottom line is I think the family is smart enough to know that, that this needed to be Joe Milton's team last year, and it wasn't time for Nico. Had he needed to play, and I remember the one game that Milton tweaked his knee, you could see that Nico's just bouncing up and down, and he's ready to play. I think that he would have gotten in there, and he wouldn't have redshirted had they had to play him. But this revenue sharing that's coming in, I mean, Caleb, here's the trajectory we're on means I'm not crazy for suggesting that by the time that Nico is a senior, they could offer him, or in this case, a junior with a redshirt year, that they could offer him as much as the NIL because the NFL, because the trajectory is firing up. Nico is getting $2 million a year. 5 years ago, he was getting $0. a year. I mean, the trajectory is going up so fast. So what's a year worth in 5 years from now when he has to, I know this sounds crazy, possibly sign another contract because NFL scouts have questions about his footwork or questions about this, and it's a tough quarterback class, and he might go the middle or late first round, or he might slide into the second. I don't believe any of this, Caleb. This is just devil's advocate, okay? What happens if Tennessee can offer him $10 million a year? And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility in 4 years.
That's an interesting point. That's something to further dive into. Can colleges with revenue sharing offer more money than NFL? I'm not sure of that yet, but that's certainly a possibility.
The number I heard is each school is going to be mandatorily have to pay $23 or so million out of the chute. Now, the interesting thing is that it's at their discretion. Okay, so if it's at my discretion, yeah, I've got to take care of some former players, but am I going to give Tyler Bray as much as I'm going to give Nico if he'll come back another year? No, it's my discretion. Tyler gets a $50 gift certificate to Arby's.
First of all, people would be mad if you gave Tyler a $1 gift certificate to Arby's.
You do have to go back, and it does.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, go back some. So you would have to he does get a check.
Like, this is one of those, like, if you so much as recognize Tyler Bray, I will kill you. That's what some Tennessee fans were thinking in their mind because they despise him. But I get your point. Yes. It could rival in football. It'll never rival in basketball because NBA money is just too great. NBA money is just, like, way too great. But I could see it in football.
And it would also rival. It wouldn't rival. Tennessee would blow it away in your favorite word, culture. Because I've covered enough NFL, not a lot, but enough to know, Caleb, half those guys are miserable. They just happen to be big athletic athletes, and they happen to be good at football. But do they love it? No. And I've been around a lot of athletes, but in the NFL, it's so hard on your body. I think a lot of those guys are miserable. So they're going to be playing 18 regular season games by the time Nico gets there. That's a guarantee. The 18th game is going to happen. So would you rather play 18 games? You don't know where you're going to go in the draft, or would you rather be with your buddies if the money's even close to the same? And when I say close to the same, I'm saying half. I mean, what did the number one pick in the NFL draft get last year, Caleb? Do you have any idea? I mean, how matchable even would this number be? I don't know that it possibly is. I remind you that our good friends
4-year deals, $38.5 million. So about almost $10 million a year, $9.5 million a year.
Is that not a little bit closer than you thought? So okay, Peyton Manning didn't have to worry about money because of his upbringing in his family. So he came back because college football was more fun. And I guarantee you Peyton Manning would say this to Nico. College football is more fun. Now, you're risking injury and all that, and Peyton's going to be open and honest. But that season, I guarantee you, was more fun than any season he had in the NFL. So if you could get it to $5 million a year and you're already at $2 million, is Josh Heupel thinking that he gets 4 seasons as a starter or even 3 seasons as a starter out of Nico Iamaleava? Because I didn't think that to start the show.
That's certainly possible. That's certainly very intriguing and very possible. It'll also depend on who the number one pick is. Peyton Manning didn't come back because he likes college. That's what he tells you guys. He came back because the Jets had the number one pick and he didn't want to go play for the Jets.
Which is probably a smart move, but you'd have to agree it was a little bit of both.
I think retroactively he loves it because he loved his college career. The way his senior year worked out makes it look like it was a better decision because he won an SEC title, should have won the Heisman, set every record possible. But I think the thing that swung it, if a better franchise has the number one draft pick after 96, I think he's going to the NFL.
I think it was a factor. I think if maybe he didn't have the same returning players that he had at Tennessee, he would have gone to the NFL. I think there are a lot of
well, I think returning players may have hurt him a little bit. It may have hurt the Tennessee case to keep him because remember, Joey Kent was gone. He was losing Joey Kent.